Hey everybody, welcome to Off the Shelf Board Game Reviews. This video right here is going to be an introduction to my top 51 board games of all time. Now before we get started, I want to go over a couple rules and also cover a couple different things. So what I want to cover first is the rules of what are required to be a top 51 board game of all time for me. Now for me, a board game has to be enjoyable, obviously, has to be playable at a variety of player counts, and the game has to have lots of replay to it. So for me, any game that's going to be a flash in the pan, or a game that you're going to play once and be done with it, while it may be a fantastic game, is not going to be a game that's going to reach the top of my top 51 board games of all time. And that's just my opinion, and well, this list is all about opinions anyways, but I just want to let you know that's going to be a criteria for any game making it to the top of my list. So a really good example of this would be like Detective. It's a very popular game, and I'm not going to lie, I enjoy the game a heck of a lot. I think it's an absolutely fantastic game, and I think if you haven't played it, you should go out and play it. It's probably going to be the most enjoyable experience you're going to have with up to five people, 4 friends obviously, but the best enjoyment you're going to have with a whole bunch of people. It's perfect app integration, and I'm going to cover that in just a couple seconds here and a little bit further in this video, but it's absolutely perfect app integration. It's a social game. It does everything right, but it's not my top 51 board games of all time. Not because it's a bad game, but because it's a game that you're going to play once, well, 5 times in the case of Detective, and then you're going to be done with the game. And so the game doesn't make it to my list because fantastic game doesn't meet my criteria. Whereas to opposed to another game would be like maybe Pandemic Legacy. That's another game that's a very finite play. It only plays 12 times, you're pretty much going to be done with the game. Well, of course, if you fail, you're going to get more plays out of it. But yeah, you know what I'm saying here. The point is that Pandemic, I didn't like because I just flat out didn't like the game. But you're going to see a little bit of discrepancy there just from that aspect. I want to get that point across. Basically, I just want to say if a game is not replayable, it's not going to be on my list. I'm sorry. I know there's lots of fantastic games that have very limited replay. You don't have replay, you're not on my list. Next thing that a game has to have is it cannot be multiplayer solitaire. I really abhor multiplayer solitaire. I would rather invite some friends over, watch a fantastic movie, and discuss the movie, have a lot of fun, making jokes, throwing popcorn at each other, whatever we want to do. It's my house, I can do stuff like that. Have a couple beers and have tons of fun. That's also multiplayer solitaire because you can't interact with the environment, and that's why multiplayer solitaire games kind of usually fail for me too. So you're not going to see any games on this list that happen to fall in the category of multiplayer solitaire. So what you're going to find here on this list are a list of a lot of games that have lots of variety, lots of replay potential, lots of enjoyment built into the game, and you're going to see everything from, well, let's say more easy to teach games all the way up to vast complex games that take a lot of time to play, a lot of strategy to play well, and probably you're going to play a lot of these games multiple times to see the fantastic replay and enjoyment you're going to get out of these games. And that's the final thing I want to say. Time playing of a game is never ever a factor for me when it comes to enjoyment of a game. I don't care how long a game takes to play. If I am enjoying the game for every single moment I am playing that game, I don't care if that game takes 30 minutes, 3 hours, or 4 hours. If I enjoy the game and I'm having tons of fun the entire time I'm playing it, that's a great game. Being a long playing game is not a negative ever. The only time a game is a negative when it's a long playing game is if the whole time you're playing it, you're sitting there looking at your watch, looking at your phone, and looking over and going, is it my turn yet? Nope. Okay. Nope. Okay. Those are not good games. But any game, doesn't matter how long it is, if I'm plugged in the game the entire time, everybody's having fun, we're all having a great time, sitting around the table, joking, having lots of fun, that makes for a fantastic game. So now that we got the little preamble out of the way, what I want to do is I'm going to cover my top 3 games that should have made this list. And, well, I'm going to cheat. There's actually a 4th game there. But these are the top 3 games that should have made my list. And the reason why they're not on my list is simply because I did not have enough time to play these games. These are my top 51 games that I have played extensively, and I am willing to back up my opinions on these games. If anybody says, that game's not that great, I'll sit there and tell you why it's a great game. Well, I want to include 3 additional games that I am willing to bet if I played these games a lot more, they would wholeheartedly be on this list. I just didn't think it'd be fair to include these games if I've only had 3 or maybe, well, looking at one of them, nope, 3 isn't the most I've played any of these games. Wait. Do you consider a solo game where you're learning how to play? Nah, probably don't. Anyways, I think I played every one of these games tops 3 times, which to me is not enough to put a game on top 51 games of all time list. But I see how good these games are. I know my likes, I know what I enjoy, and I'm positive these games will be on my list next time I do this. Also, the fourth game isn't even out yet, but looking at the designer, it's going to be on this list. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm positive about this. So before this just looks like, well, it's a top 55 games of all time list, which is definitely is not. I'm not trying to cheat or anything like this. I'm also going to put on my fire suit here and include the top 3 games that I should have liked, but I either, well, don't like, or actually I just don't think they're good games. I just don't enjoy the games at all. And one of them, the number 1, I'm going to actually take a little bit of extra time to talk about. So that's enough of the little rambling, want stuff. I just want to go on and let you know what's going on here. And let's start this all off with the top 3, well, call it 4, top 4 board games that will definitely be on this list next time I record, but not quite there yet. Now, number 4, or let's just call it the honorable mention, so y'all don't call me a dirty cheater here, but the honorable mention is going to be On Mars by Vital Lacerda. Now, Vital Lacerda is a designer whose games I really enjoy. Matter of fact, he has not made a game yet that I do not enjoy or actually find very good on some level. I enjoy all of his designs, because he is a designer that likes to design games that are not only thematic, but his designs fit the theme extremely well. And I have no doubt in my mind that On Mars is going to continue his pedigree. Not only that, again, he's been paired up with a fantastic artist in Ian O'Toole, who makes some fantastic board game art. So when I'm talking about this, I'm only going to take a few moments to talk about the game, because obviously I don't own it, and I don't want to look like an absolute 100% hypocrite here. But I can look at the components. I can look at the rulebook by going online and downloading parts of the rulebook and reading over the rulebook. I can look at how well he's designed his games in the past. I can look at how well I've enjoyed everything about Vital Lacerda's designs in the past. And I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that On Mars will definitely be on my top 51 tabletop games list of all time next year when I do this list. It's a great designer. It's got mechanics I know I'm going to love. It's got everything I enjoy. Matter of fact, I know the only negative I'm ever going to have about the game is the fact that it is only up to 4 players. If it went up to 5 players, I know it'd probably be a hit, probably really high on my list. So again, to avoid sounding like a hypocrite here and avoiding trying to use the crystal ball here, which I should never do as an honest reviewer, I can say as an honorable mention, I have no doubt in my mind that On Mars will probably be in my top 51 tabletop games of all time. Number 3 on my list is going to be Terraforming Mars. Now, before you think this is just going to be me rambling in front of a pre-generated green screen behind me, don't think that's what is going on here. I'm definitely going to have every one of these games laid out here, because that's what I like to do in these videos. But for Terraforming Mars, I backed the Kickstarter for the all-inclusive version of the game, so I no longer have the base game, because it's kind of silly to have multiple copies of the same game. And I'm pretty much anticipating that Terraforming Mars, the complete deluxe edition from Stronghold Games, oh my gosh, I almost forgot the name of the company, from Stronghold Games, is going to be releasing pretty darn soon. So unfortunately I don't have it, but it doesn't stop me from talking about the game. Now, Terraforming Mars is another game that's kind of like my honorable mention, but it's a game about terraforming the planet of Mars, obviously, but it's a fantastic game that I actually know about versus On Mars, which I'm just assuming on. But Terraforming Mars is a fantastic game that allows a lot of the mechanics, a lot of the gameplay, a lot of the strategy, and a lot of the variety that I think goes into a top 51 game of all time when we talk about tabletop gaming. And one thing that is definitely is in the favor of Terraforming Mars, which may actually, because I'm not going to lie to you here, when On Mars comes out, it's literally going to have to compete with Terraforming Mars, because only one of these 2 games is going to be on my top 51 games list. And there's a good chance that Terraforming Mars might actually win the competition, because it goes up to 5 players. Now, I know for a lot of people don't like playing games up to 5 players, because the time to play the game makes the game seem like it takes a little bit too long to play. Now, for me, the amount of time it takes to play the game is not a consequence for me if the game is enjoyable the entire time. For me, if a game is enjoyable the entire time, doesn't matter if there's a Godzilla cat or not, if the game is enjoyable the entire time, I'm going to enjoy it, whether the player count allows me to or not. So my gaming group goes up to 5. So if I can get the game to the table, because that's 5 players, it's probably going to win out. So there's going to be an interesting competition in my mind between On Mars and Terraforming Mars to see which game is going to come out on top, or the Godzilla kitty is going to be the one that's going to come out on top. Okay, now we've gone past the visually boring part of the games that I actually don't have to show you. Now we get down to the fun stuff, because now I can show you games that I definitely own and definitely know that I like a heck of a lot, and probably can talk a lot better because it's not fun to sit there and talk about the open air that doesn't exist. Anyways, Warhammer Underworlds is number 2 on my list of games that will probably make it to my top 51 games of all time list by next year. Now this game, interestingly enough, was actually on my list for quite a while until another game came out that replaced it. At this point, Warhammer Underworlds Beastgrave, which is, I don't have the box top in front of me. How's that for unprepared? But Warhammer Underworlds Beastgrave was announced and it wasn't quite out yet. And now that it is out and has fixed a couple little issues that I've actually had with the game, I think it may actually replace the game that replaced it, which is kind of a weird way of talking. It makes me sound kind of like a little bit of a goofball. But the point is, this game was replaced, but it may end up replacing the game it actually replaced, thanks to the newest incarnation of Beastgrave. Now what Beastgrave has done is it has changed the game up a little bit and removed one of the main stickler points I had with the game. The main stickler point I have with Beastgrave, or I should say with Warhammer Underworlds, is not that it's a bad game. It's quite the opposite. It's a fantastic strategy game. It is an extremely tight economy game. You have so limited amount of moves. Matter of fact, if you've never played the game before, you literally only have 12 actions in the entire game. You have 12 actions to get more victory points than your opponent before they get more victory points than you. And like most Warhammer or most Games Workshop games, yes, there are some dice involved, but the dice are not the real thing that's involved with this game. The 100% strategy and gameplay of this game is taking your warband, finding all the strengths of your warband, removing all the weaknesses of your warband by having a deck of cards. And that is the coolest thing about the game, but it's also a thing that kind of made me hesitate about putting on my top 51 games list. Because this game is a lot like Magic the Gathering, which is another absolutely fantastic game that has been around for well over 20 years. Obviously, a lot of people agree that the game is awesome and very fantastic, but Magic the Gathering isn't on my list for the same reason this game is not on my list. When I invite my friends over to play a board game, I want to be able to pull out a board game, toss it on the table, have everybody belly up to the table, get out, get our drinks ready, and just start having fun immediately. You can't do that with Magic the Gathering. You can't really do that with this game, at least until Beastgrave came out. Because part of the strategy of this game is in the deck construction. This is one of those games where a lot of players, especially some extremely competitive players, are going to spend a lot of time agonizing on the pre-game, which is building your deck. You're going to be making a deck of cards that takes all the advantages of your heroes and removes all the disadvantages of your heroes in anticipation of the kind of team that your opponent is going to field on the table. So you see that this game is a game that has a lot of pre-game strategy, which sounds really funny to say, but half of this game is played before you even put the game on the table, simply because of the deck of cards you're going to build up for your warband before you hit the table. So what Beastgrave has done is it now comes with a set of cards that actually allows you to play the game right out of the box with good teams and good cards and some good factions that actually work really, really well. It's like they actually took some time to design some really good cards, and they changed up the rules just a little bit and made a couple improvements to the game, which again allows me to think that this game may be on my top 51 games next year because it fixed that one issue of you can't just take this game, throw it on the table and play it because of the fact that you have to do the pre-game building. Now that that's been taken away, now that adds a lot of more potential to play the game. Now it adds the ability for me to invite actually friends over and say, hey, pick a faction. Okay, you pick a faction. Let's go and have some fun. Now we can do that. That's something they fixed, which means that Warhammer Underworlds Beastgrave might be in my top 51 games of all time. Number 1 on my list of games that will probably be in my top 51 tabletop games of all time. Man, that's becoming a tongue twister to say, so thank goodness this is the last time I got to say it. But it's going to be Dinosaur Island. Now, a long time ago, if you would have told me I was going to become a fan of worker placement games, I probably would have thought you were kind of crazy and said, you have no idea my game taste. But I guess in the long run, what it really meant is I just didn't know my own game taste. Because as time goes by, I am enjoying worker placement games more and more and more. You look at Agricola, I enjoy Agricola. I enjoy Lords of Waterdeep. I enjoy the Manhattan Project. I enjoy oops, I better be careful. I might start giving away some spoilers here. But as time is going by, I'm finding out that I am liking worker placement games more and more and more. What Dinosaur Island has done is taken a worker placement game and added a really cool theme to it. Heck, Jurassic Park. If you don't like Jurassic Park, or you've never seen Jurassic Park, never seen the movies, or read the absolutely fantastic books, you're missing out on one heck of a really cool idea and a really cool experience. But what they have done, Pandasaurus Games, which is the designers of Dinosaur Island, is they have created a worker placement game in a really, really cool theme. Who has never wanted, as a kid growing up, wanted to do anything with dinosaurs? And you can in this game. This game is actually really interesting because it combines dice, which is almost an anathema to a lot of people, but allows you to have dice for literal randomness, not randomness in how you play the game. The dice are actually randomness in how the game is more of a setup, which is a really cool way to include dice in a worker placement game without you feeling handicapped by the fact that dice are totally screwing you over. Because you can never really do a worker placement game with true dice. Well, you could, but you'd have to work on it. And there has actually been a couple games that have managed to do it, but they managed to include cool dice in a very cool way, and a very interesting game that is all about worker placement and some really fantastic components. And let's not forget about these really cool boards that, you know, a lot of companies can take hints about, Eclipse, other companies, about having little slots for your little tracking cubes that make sure they don't slide around when some idiot comes along and bumps the table after they're reaching across for another couple of chips from the chip bag. So, really cool components, really awesome game. Really fantastic idea, and I hate to admit it, but I'm becoming a fan of worker placement games. Okay, I am a fan of worker placement games. Dinosaur Island is probably going to be in my top 51 tabletop games of all time. Now that we've covered 3 games that'll probably make it to my top 51 games, let's cover 3 games that will never make my list of top 51 games. Now these games are never going to make it for various reasons. Like number 3, I feel just absolutely, for me, failed to deliver on the promise. Number 2, just felt too much like I was being railroaded. And number 1, for some reason, just felt predictable. I never felt like it was a deep enough strategy, and the game just felt far, far too fragile to ever make my top list of best games ever. Let's hit the list. Number 3 on the list is Dragonfire from Catalyst Games, which is a game that absolutely had every single hallmark to make me think that this is going to be a game that I'm going to love, enjoy, keep in my board game collection forever. Well, still my board game collection, but it's definitely a game that is never going to hit any of my highs for a couple very important reasons. Before we go in, what is Dragonfire? Dragonfire is basically takes the Dungeons & Dragons game, which I'm a huge fan of Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing D&D since the 80s, well, probably the mid-80s, and I've been playing RPGs. It's supposed to be an RPG in a box. I've been looking for a good game that's a good campaign game that will replace the Pathfinder games, which Pathfinder I thought was a pretty darn good game. I enjoyed it a lot, but I wanted something to replace it that felt different and didn't feel like it relied on the dice rolls. And Dragonfire, when I looked into it, it almost seemed like it was promising every one of those things for me. A replacement for Pathfinder, a way to play an RPG on a tabletop, a campaign game where I felt like my heroes were going to level up and expand and become more powerful, so I can go on more powerful adventures for lots of variety, and the game failed to deliver on almost every one of those aspects. Now don't get me wrong, it's not a bad game, and that's not the point of this top 3 list. It's basically games that weren't good for me, and I want to explain to you why these weren't games that are good for me. Maybe my reasons are things that you're actually going to like, and you may find better reasons to like the games than I did. Now for me, the biggest failure that Dragonfire ever had is I never ever felt like my heroes were progressing in any way, shape, and form. And I have played this game a lot. I've gone through multiple campaigns, and yeah, I use black and whites because I'm one of those weird people who didn't want to damage my precious little character boards by writing all over them because, you know, well, we all have our little persnickety-ness in our lives, and that's my thing. I hate damaging components, so I just made photocopies to play the game with it. So I played the game multiple times, but every single time I have played the game, I have never ever felt like my heroes were progressing, and it simply was because of the simple deck of hero cards. I was always always using the same cards every time I played my heroes. Sure, my heroes would level up and get new extra abilities. Once in a while, after doing multiple adventures, they get some experience I can spend to get some level up abilities. But basically, the abilities were allowing me to get more of the same cards that I was using over and over and over again, so I never felt like there's any sense of progression with my heroes. Every time I played the game, I start out with a certain amount of cards based on my hero. So for example, this hero right here, you start out with 5 of these cards. I'm going to drop the cards, that's going to look really fun on camera. Start with 5 glory cards, and I pick 4, I had 3 other cards, and as I leveled up, I may add one of these cards, or I may add one of these cards, but I was always using this darn deck of cards. Even when I got a magic item, it would stay in my deck until it was used, if I got lucky enough to make it come up, or if it came up at the right time for me to use it, and then it would go away. I never felt any sense of progression with this game. Sure, the adventures were pretty cool, they're pretty interesting, never really balanced. I mean, there were some adventures that you'd go into going, okay, oops, that's the wrong one. I'm not going to dig through and waste the time here. But there's some adventures where you literally went against them multiple times because you needed enough experience to pass them. And I just never really truly felt that this game met all of the potential it could have met, which is really interesting because I thought the Shadowrun board game was perfect. But it's probably because this game was meant more for a Shadowrun style game. Because if you never played the Shadowrun RPG, there was never any really grand advancement when you played Shadowrun. You had your hero, you may get better cyberware, you may get better weapons, you may upgrade yourself, but your upgrades were very minute. Dungeons & Dragons was never about minute upgrades. You start off as the lowly peasant hero who had your sword. By the end of reaching 20th level, you were a mighty hero fighting big, powerful creatures. You were taking down Tarrasque. You were fighting dragons. Your party was tearing through things. I never felt that in Dragonfire. I simply felt that I was playing the same game with the same cards over and over and over again. Now, I'm not saying the game is bad. Obviously, it's not a bad game because I still actually own the game, and I don't think I'd ever get rid of it. But I just never felt the game lived up to its promise. I felt disappointed. Every time I play this game, I play it a little bit, and then I'll play a few adventures, and I may go, well, that was kind of interesting. It's kind of a nice way to pass the time, but I never really felt like this is a game where I'm like, I can't wait till I get to the next adventure. I want to go through the next adventure. I want to level up my hero. I want to get better, because I never felt that from Dragonfire. Number 2 on the list is Mansions of Madness, specifically 2nd edition, because I'm not going to lie here. I still own the 1st edition of this, and I think the 1st edition is extremely awesome. Matter of fact, this is a heavy box because I got all the expansion in here. Weighs a lot more in this box, which I have 0 of the expansions in, because I don't want to invest any more money into the game because I just do not enjoy it. And why do I not enjoy it? Well, what's the big difference between the 1st and the 2nd edition? Now I know all of you are going to yell at the screen, it's the application. And you're right. Although, I'm not one of those people who cannot stand an application in a board game. That's actually cannot be further from the truth. I actually do not mind a good application involvement in a board game if it's done right. If you watched the earlier part of the video, I mentioned the game Detective, which is done by Portal Games. That is an absolutely brilliant game with an absolutely brilliant integration of an application or the internet, or however you want to say it, because, not to give away too much about Detective, but Detective uses an application through a web service, and you're actually using more than just the application, using the internet. But I don't want to give away too many spoilers because I still think Detective is an absolutely fantastic game, and that is perfect app integration. Mansions of Madness 2nd edition is not perfect app integration. And matter of fact, while in this part of the video I'm actually picking on Mansions of Madness 2nd edition, I'm not really just picking on this game. I'm actually picking on all 3 of the app-based games from Fantasy Flight Games. That means Descent. That means Mansions of Madness, and it also means Imperial Assault. And here's my problem. The application is absolutely terrible when it comes to the artificial intelligence of the application. The application artificial intelligence is so horrible that I cannot remove myself from how horrible the artificial intelligence is and start enjoying the game, which is really unfortunate for me because I enjoy the Arkham universe. I enjoy Arkham Horror. I have 2nd edition. I have almost everything available for 2nd edition. And no, I have not purchased 3rd edition. It's not because I'm fighting against 3rd edition. It's simply because I have so much for 2nd edition. Why am I going to buy it all over again for 3rd edition, which may have some minor changes? Yes, I agree, but It's not enough for me to throw all the money at the game all over again. I didn't buy Eldritch Hoarder for the same reason. I don't need a game that's going to do a lot of the same things and spend all that money all over again for the same game. Why do it? It doesn't make sense to me. But on point, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition and these games that use the application AI to me is so darn shallow. I can literally see the workings of the application, not obviously, but I can pretty much predict what the application is going to do. And the application is going to try to force time. To me, that does not feel like a good game. That does not make an enjoyable experience for me at all. It is always seeming like the application has this built-in timer built into it. And once you reach that wall of the timer, for whatever reason it happens to be, maybe you had a couple of bad dice rolls, maybe you went left when you should have went right, whatever happens to be, especially with the new Lord of the Rings application or game, which is also doing the exact same thing, which is just driving me crazy. But if you just made that one poor choice, you're pretty much going to fail, because the application has a built-in thing that's saying, basically, just a stupid example, you have 5 rounds to solve this mystery. If you don't do it in 5 rounds, round 6 is going to give you a big penalty, round 7 is going to give you an even bigger penalty, round 8 is going to give you an impossible penalty that you cannot beat. And every time I get to that wall, it literally pulls me out of the game so much that I cannot enjoy the experience anymore. So that is why I abhor 2nd edition, but I absolutely really enjoy 1st edition, to the point that I made sure to buy every single expansion before this went out of print, and I still enjoy this. I still have a lot of fun playing it, and I will happily pull this game out. I won't happily pull this game out anymore. If they would find a way to make it a game where one player is controlling the game versus the other players, that way a human AI or a human player, a human brain playing against other players can keep you in the story, I would be all for it. But right now, playing against the app, I have zero desire, zero interest, and there's no way I'm going to play this app-based game ever again. Matter of fact, if anybody would just give me like 40 bucks for the game, I'd say, here, it's yours. I'm done with it. I am never pulling it out again. And I am not just looking at this through, you know, a bad experience I played through this. I have played this game multiple times with multiple different groups. I have gone through all the adventures. Well, I should say I've gone through all the adventures in the base set. I have not wanted to throw any more money at the game, because every time I played every one of these adventures, I feel like I hit that wall of the timer and I just do not have fun with the game anymore. I hate that timer. I despise it. And I know part of the reason why this is because I am an old school role player. If I ever played an RPG, and again, these are trying to be an RPG in a box, but if I ever played an RPG with somebody who said, okay guys, you have 4 rounds to beat the big bad guy. If you don't, he's going to go super mode. Okay, in round 6 he's going to go super duper mode, and in round 7 he's just going to blow you all up. Okay, ready? Start rolling the dice. If I played a game like that with somebody, I'd get up, walk away from the table, and never play the game with them again. And that's where I'm at with Mansions of Madness 2nd edition and all these app-based games that just don't do it right. Now, number 3 on my list is probably not going to get me a lot of hate mail at all. Number 2 on my list might get me a little bit of hate mail, but number 1 on my list is definitely going to get me tons of hate mail. But I'm sorry, I don't enjoy Root. Root is supposed to be an area control game, mixed in with a war game, mixed in with a coin game, simplified down so you can play in probably about, let's go with an hour and a half. And for me, it's not enjoyable at all. And I have tried to play Root many, many, many times now. Matter of fact, I've tried to enjoy it so many times that I am actually willing to play this game one more time, and I'm getting my friends to finally agree on this because they don't want to play it anymore either. But we are agreeing to play it one more time. We're actually going to record that playthrough, and I'm going to upload that on that channel. And I'm going to let you guys tell us that we're either playing the game wrong, or you're just going to see why we don't like the game, because it's not for us. Now, what is Root? Root is a game that's an asymmetric game where every single player takes control of one of the various factions. You have the woodland faction, you have the cats, you have the birds, you have the lonely little raccoon. If you get an expansion, you have the lizards, which need a FAQ to fix, and then you have the badgers, or the beavers, sorry, not the badgers, the beavers. Every one of these factions is interacting with the other factions in a way to play a different style game. Now, every one of these factions has their own way of getting their victory points, and every one of these factions has their own thing that they're supposed to be trying to do. But the game for me has fallen apart on multiple levels. The first thing it's fallen apart on is the game is very, very fragile. What do I mean by fragile? Well, the game requires you to play with certain factions versus other factions. Now, there are rules that allow you to play with any faction you want versus any faction you want, but even the most staunchest supporters of Root will tell you, don't do it. And to me, that is a negative. I can take a lot of great board games that are asymmetric, where all the players have different powers. Now, I agree that they're not as asymmetric as Root is, so I do have to give her credit for being this extremely asymmetric. I mean, you have one faction in the game, the raccoon, which is one piece. Whereas you have other factions such as the cats, or you have the birds, which are a lot of pieces. So I agree, nobody's ever made a game this absolutely asymmetric. It's probably for a good reason, because that doesn't make very good gameplay. You have an unbalanced game here. You have a game where certain factions really just don't stand a chance unless other factions are on the board, because they need to create a game state that allows you to interact. Now, I'm not going to sit here and analyze every one of these combinations, because I haven't done them all. There are 6 factions in the game right now. There's 2 more factions coming out in the Kickstarter. That's 8 factions. You have a game that plays anywhere from 2 to 6 players. I've never played this game again as a 6 player. I'll never play it again as a 5 player. I'm probably never going to play it, well, I'm either going to play it again as a 3 or 4 player one more time when I upload that video. But beyond that, I really just don't have any desire to play this game, because it feels way too fragile. A game should not be made, let me rephrase that. A game should not require a certain board state to become enjoyable. I should be able to pull out a game and say, what do you want to play? There you go. What do you want to play? Oh, there you go. What do you want to play? Great. Let's get out. Let's have a lot of fun. I can do this with all the asymmetric games I have. Many of the asymmetric games I have, and I'm not going to name them because some of them are on my top 51 games. I'm trying to avoid too many spoilers because I've already given away too many of them. But I can name so many of those games, and it doesn't matter what factions people pick, we're going to have fun. Not in this game. This is a game where I have to look at one player and say, what do you want to play? Oh, you want to play this faction? Okay, well, we can't play this faction. Let me go and pull it out. What do you want to play? Oh, you want to play that? Oh, well, do you want to play a different one? No, you don't? Okay, well, no. To me, that's not good. That makes the game feel fragile. It feels like you need a perfect playing environment to really enjoy the game. Now, I know some of you are yelling at the computer screen right now and demanding that I admit that I'm wrong here, but I'm not wrong here. This game just requires too much of a perfect playing state. Now, there are circumstances where you may have a little bit less opportune or less perfect playing environments where it kind of makes up for it, where if you have a really experienced player, can take a faction that's not so good versus other factions and to give other players who aren't as good the less playing factions. But then you kind of have the other problem I have with Root. The game is really kind of hard to teach the players. It's a game where the first time you play it, nobody's really going to know what they're doing because you don't know how to stop the other players. To understand how to play Root well, you not only have to understand your faction, but you have to understand every other faction on the table, and you have to know how every one of those factions work, because if you don't know how they work, you're not going to know how to stop them, and that's going to create the final thing I didn't enjoy about Root. The end game is predictable. Every single time I play the game, in the last 2 rounds, I've looked at every other one of the players, and now I'm willing to admit that I may be a victim of groupthink here, and if I am, heck, prove me wrong here, but every time I've looked at other players, I've literally said, okay, everybody, if we don't stop this person from doing X, they're going to win the game. But if we stop them from doing X, this person's going to do Y, and then they're going to win the game. But if we stop them and them, then this person over here is going to do Z, and they're going to win the game. And it almost feels like a king-making environment. Now, I know I'm not a big person on harping on king-making, because I don't think king-making really exists in a lot of games. But in this game, it really kind of does. It almost feels like your decisions in the last 2 rounds are basically going to pick the winner of the game, because you either stop the person from winning, or there's really nothing you can do because the scoring in this game is open. And I think that's something that would probably make me enjoy it a little bit better with the game if the scoring in this game was not unknown. And I'm not going to sit here and modify the game. I'm not going to try to come up with a whole bunch of different varieties of ways to play the game, and I'm not going to try to fix the game. I'm just going to basically sit here and tell you the reasons why I don't enjoy the game. I don't think the factions are well balanced in all play environments. I don't think they all work against each other very well. I think that they are certain environments that are required for the game. I think some of the factions require a little bit too much luck to be really good. I've had some games with the Eerie where I just totally obliterate everybody just because the cards they got were better than everybody else's. Now, I know that's a horrible way to describe it, but It really is the best way to describe it for me. There's just been some games where I just got the right cards, which allowed me to pick the right decree, which just allowed me to just kind of steamroll the other players, and there wasn't anything I can do about it. Now, maybe it's because I knew the game too well, and maybe they didn't know it well enough. I don't think so. The guys I play the games with, they're all really smart guys. I play these games with people who play a lot of really in-depth games or really deep strategic games, a lot of games that have a lot of working parts, and they pick up on them really quickly. Root didn't happen like that. They picked up on it, but then they're kind of like, can we play something else? I mean, the last time we played Root, I walked away from the table. I know that makes me a horrible board gamer, but I literally walked away from the table and said, guys, just, this is what my next two moves are. I'm going to go get the pizza. Somebody else said, yeah, I'll come with you to get the pizza. And then somebody else said, why don't we just fold the game up because nobody's having fun? And I kind of said, okay, I'm still going to get the pizza, but you guys clean up the game, put out the next game. When I come back, we're going to play a better game. So we don't enjoy Root. I find it to be a little bit fragile. I think the game is just a little bit too simplistic. I think that the barrier to entry for the game is just not where it needs to be for this game. And again, I'm really, really willing to be proven wrong here because I am going to play this game again. I am going to record the session. I am going to upload it. And I'm going to let you guys tell me that either we are doing some horribly, stupidly wrong and I missed a rule, which I'm willing to accept, or you're just going to see that we're not enjoying the game. That's Root, the #1 game on my list that is never going to make it to my top 51 games of all time. Hope you enjoyed this introduction to my top 51 tabletop games of all time. There's going to be a total of 7 videos in this series. This video right here, and then there's going to be 5 videos. Each one's going to have 10 videos, except the first one's going to have 11 because, you know, math. Then the final video, I'm going to take a little bit of time to do a little retrospective and say why I feel the way about some of these games, do a little bit of self-analysis, and show you some trends in my list. I guess that's a good way to describe it. Also, for every single video that I'm going to have my handy dandy tablet Surface handy right here. And for every one of the games, I'm going to make sure I'm going to say exactly where they happen to stand on the prior list. And the interesting thing, again, if you didn't watch the other video, just to let you know, I did not look at my prior list at all before making this list. And one of the cool things is one of my games didn't move at all, which I found kind of interesting. And also one game dropped over 40 places. Actually, I think it may have been even a little bit higher than that to fall completely off the list. So it's going to be kind of interesting, be a little bit of self-analysis. Stay tuned for those videos, and as always, thanks for watching.